Om Sarvadharma Sthapakastvam Sarvadharma Swarupakaha Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. We are studying the first part of Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master, and we are in the name of the first part is historical background and early life, and we are reading the chapter second from that, named Sri Ramakrishna's birthplace and ancestry. And after our avatar concept has been developed in the Avataranика introduction, and the need of the age has been described in the first chapter. In the second chapter, Kamarpukur, the birthplace of Sri Ramakrishna, has been described, and we are now dealing with the ancestry, starting from his grandfather, Manik Chattopadhyay. Manikram Chattopadhyay. And we have known that he had Sudhiram, Ramshila, Nidhiram, and Kanairam. And out of that, we are concerned with Sudhiram. So we go back to para 11 to know the character of Sudhiram, the very special, rare, I would say, character of Sudhiram, and because of which Thakur or the God came to his house. It is not known whether Sudhiram ever became proficient in any kind of learning that brought him money, but the Lord had blessed him with truthfulness, contentment, forgiveness, renunciation. Mind you, he is a householder. Renunciation and other noble qualities, the possession of which is considered by the Shastras the mark of a good Brahmin. So a good Brahmin has truthfulness, first thing, truthfulness. Contentment. We have to feel this within ourselves and find out where we stand in comparison. If God came in the house of Sudhiram as his son, so God will come in our heart if we possess these qualities and not otherwise. That is the meaning of description of Sudhiram's character. Forgiveness and renunciation. So we must sincerely introspect ourselves in these four special qualities. He was tall and strong. So here the question of Brahmin and all that is not so important as Sudhiram's character. He was tall and strong and had a fair complexion and pleasing looks. Pleasing look suggests the harmony inside. Sudhiram showed a deep devotion to Sri Ramachandra, quality number 5. Deep devotion to God in the form of Ramachandra, who had been worshipped in his family generation after generation. So it was a hereditary trend, but he was specially devoted to him. He was in the habit of performing Sandhya along with his other daily routine, quality number 6, adherence to religious practices. After which he would collect flowers for the worship of Raghuveer. So collecting flowers is a subsidiary to worship and which makes the mind engage in the act of worship even before we are worshipping. Not until he finished his worship would he eat anything. So we may add here austerity or nishtha. He never accepted gifts from Shudras, so hardships suffered by Brahmin, and would even refuse invitations from Brahmins who perform religious rites for them. So strictness in his own life is a mark of the sadhana progress which he will make. Nor would he drink water touched by Brahmins who took money for giving their daughters in marriage. So, not question of Shudras only, Brahmins, but they have taken money for giving their daughters in marriage. That is he considered as pollution, and he would not drink water from them because there is ashraya dosh in matters of food. These are very important things, though the modern people or the Western people or the Punjabis also in India do not pay attention to that. That when the Ramanujas describe 3 doshas in food which will pollute our mind. The first he calls as jati dosha. That means by the very type of the food we are eating, the mind is polluted. The second is nimitta dosha. That means some dust particles or this or that should not have fallen there. And the important is ashraya dosha. From where that food we are getting, that man's sanskara travel mostly through food. And so that is the important point. And that Sudhiram is following very strictly, though the caste is Brahmin. So it is not caste consideration for food. It is the consideration of food being polluted by wrong sanskara. He was greatly loved and respected by the villagers. That is the result of all this. To earn respect and love, especially love and respect together from surroundings or villagers shows the highly developed state of his mind for his faithful observance of pious customs. Now come the test for that. We have already known that the landlord of this is all happening in Deres, not in Kamarpukur. And the lord of Dere, landlord, was a bad person we already come to know. Now let us see how the test came. Before that, Chandramani Devi, wife of Sudhira. So that also must be described. Thakur's mother, in such a house he came. So how was his wife? Sudhiram took up management of the ancestral property on the death of his father. Ancestral property means farmland. So he became the head of the family after the death of his father. Management of the ancestral property already. He performed this duty as best as he could. So a grahastha must do his duty. So that also Sudhiram is doing. He performed his duty as best as he could. In the name of religion, some people neglect their duty, remaining at the same time steadfast in the path of religion. So, to balance these two things is the essential quality of an outsider's life. Then only the evolution takes place. Sometime previously, he had married and taken up family responsibilities, that is according to the custom of the age. But his wife had died young. When he was about 25 years of age, he married a second time. That was the regular custom in those days. The bride's name was Chandramani, but in the family she was called simply Chandra. You understand? Through English spelling we shall not understand. It is not Chandramani, Chandramani. But the colloquial nickname is Chandra. Chandramani, nickname Chandra. Her father's house was in the village of Sarati Mayapur. She was, now her qualities, she was simple-hearted, good-looking, and devoted to the service of the gods and the twice-born. Twice-born means the Brahmins. So, Deva Dvija Puja Parayan, that is how it is told. Worship of the gods and Brahmins, the people who are higher in culture. And she was simple-hearted and devoted, these two main qualities. But her outstanding, what third comes? But her outstanding qualities were her heartfelt religious faith, Shraddha, then only all these are meaningful. Love and affection for all the other members of human family. And it was these that made her dear to all. This also is a spiritual quality because she became dear to all, irrespective of their age or caste or any such thing, all. Born probably in the year 1791, she must have been only about 8 years old at the time of her marriage in 1799. Her first son, Ram Kumar, is said to have been born in 1805. That means at the age of 14. Those were the ancient days. A daughter, Katyayani, was born 5 years later. And she rejoiced at the birth of her second son, Rameshwar, in 1826. So big gap. After 21 years of her daughter and after 27 years of her first son. So after this big gap, second son Rameshwar was born to her. That would come later in the story, but has been described here now. Sudhiram lost his property in a dispute with the landlord. So we have been known Sudhiram and Chandramani, and now Sudhiram's struggle. It did not take Sudhiram long to discover how difficult it was to manage worldly affairs without deviating from the path of righteousness. That is the cause of evolution. To small children we teach that if you are good, the world is good for you. This is only for the children. That is not practical in life. Swami Vivekananda, after his experience, says, Jato Uchcha Tumar Hriday Tato Dukkha Janiyo Nishchay. The higher is your heart, the more misery you will have, know it for certain. That is the nature of the world. And this friction causes evolution. If the life goes smooth, it does not lead to evolution. But this struggle, not giving up righteousness and doing duty in the world, which is a hell. But then this sangarsha, this friction, this struggle causes the inner evolution. Without deviating from the path of righteousness. Probably a short time after his daughter Katyayani was born, he had to undergo a very hard test. Probability and all that, Saradananda Swami has told us in the preface itself that he could not get exact history because he got unconnected events from different people. But as much as possible, he has smoothened everything for us. And so, his inference is that probably a short time after his daughter Katyayani was born, so Rameshwar has yet to come. He had to undergo a very hard test. We have already spoken of the operation of the tenants by Ramananda Roy, the landlord of the village. Annoyed with a certain man of the Repur, Ramananda instituted a false case against him. And since someone of good reputation was needed as a witness, case was false. And see how this tyranny works. Because Sudhiram is truthful, so his evidence, false evidence, he will take in the court. And court will believe because they know Sudhiram is truthful. Such perversion takes place because of greed. Annoyed with a certain man of Derepur, not only greed, but tyranny. I am superior this time. Ramananda issued a false case against him. And since someone of good reputation was needed as a witness, he requested Sudhiram to give evidence in his favor. The strictly upright Sudhiram always dreaded litigation because their truth and falsity, all that get mixed. Court, litigation, courts and the like, and never had recourse to them against anyone, even when he had a just cause. So he would not go to court, even if somebody has behaved wrongly and he had a just cause, he would not go to court. The request therefore came to him as a shock. Though he knew for certain that he would incur Ramananda's bitter animosity if he did not give the false evidence, he could never agree to such a course. Understand? Not so-called practical. The inevitable happened. The landlord filed a false petition in the court against him as well. Won the case because he got several evidences, paid. Won the case and got possession of the whole of Sudhiram's paternal property through auction. So, such perversion, law is blind. And what evidences are presented, law has to go according to that. And so much farmland was gone. Through auction, that is auctioned and money the other person gets. In consequence, Sudhiram had not even a square inch of land left in Derepur. Although all the people of the village felt great sympathy for him in the trouble because they loved him, respected him, and they knew he is truthful. Out of fear of the landlord, they did not dare help him in any way. That is how these tyrannists win their things. Nobody dares to oppose them, they will crush him also. So that was the test. How much land he had? Sudhiram left Dere. At the time of his loss, Sudhiram was about 40 years old. So, second marriage was 25. And so, we see Katyayani was most probably already born. The property inherited from his ancestors, together with that acquired by him, that means if he not looting others, but he is successful in farming, so he gets more land. Over many years, had vanished like a cloud dispersed by the wind. How much? We are told by Sridhara Mukhopadhyaya that Sudhiram had about 150 bighas of land at Derepur. So the old measure is a bigha or Indian measure, and the current measure is acre. So this works out to be about 43 acres. 43 acres, mind you, not a small thing. And we are told Thakur is born in a poor family because he lost all that, zero. But this calamity did not affect his upright conduct in the least. I will take to some false matter now. He took absolute refuge at the holy feet of Raghuveer. That was his natural tendency. Not that he was without any effort, but men of self-effort depend on God for the results. Calmly reflected on what he should do in order to escape the wicked landlord, because he will trouble him still more. And finally bade goodbye forever to his paternal homestead and village. So he left his home, left that village itself. Sudhiram came to Kamarpukur at the invitation of Suklal Goswami and lived there. So people of the same temperament are friends. So God provides. How much? As much is absolutely necessary. We have already mentioned Suklal Goswami of Kamarpukur. He and Sudhiram were of a like temperament and were old and intimate friends. Suklal was much moved on hearing of Sudhiram's misfortune. He could dare to help because he is not in that village. And he was himself landlord. And vacating a few thatched huts in a part of his homestead, invited him to come and live there permanently. The house used to be consisted of huts here, there. So some of them he will live for Sudhiram. He accepted the invitation, regarding it as the incomprehensible play of the Divine Lord. So that is the thing. Loss, play of the Divine Lord. Gain, play of the Divine Lord. That is how the mind remains even. Incomprehensible play, because one side everything has gone, the other side absolute necessity of residence is solved, and with his heart filled with gratitude for God and for Shukla, went to Kamarpukur, where he lived ever after. So he did not think of Dere, that is gone, and he lived in Kamarpukur permanently. Suklal, who loved his friend dearly, felt very happy at his coming and made a permanent gift to the virtuous Sudhiram, 1 bigha and 10 chataks of land for his future maintenance. So how much? 1 bigha. In place of 150 bighas, 1 bigha. And this 10 chataks is less than 1/20th of a bigha. So practically 1 bigha plus little extra. In terms of acres, 1/3 of an acre hardly. So there ends the chapter. We shall proceed to the next chapter because It is the same narration now. So I have seen truthfulness and all that, and righteous living in sansar, and that caused friction, that caused up and down and up rather. And what happened in Sudhiram's mind? More and more dependence on the Lord, more and more ingoingness, not high, depressed, not that type. Persecution, nothing of that sort came. The negative thoughts come because of our mental weakness, mental defects. A bhakta always automatically is optimist in whatever he gets or not. That is the real optimism, not because he gets something is optimist. So we shall go to the third chapter now. The name of the third chapter is The Pious Family at Kamarpukur. So his family now, let us see. The reason why Sudhiram lived like a vanaprastha at Kamarpukur. So this is an Indian term, and let me explain it to the modern readers, Indian or outside. The man's life, our scriptures are divided into 4 parts. A normal righteous man, that approximately if 100 years is the span of life, then 25 years or 1/4 is he has education, training, and religiosity or virtuousness is firmly ingrained in him. That is brahmacharya period. Then, because the inherent desires in humanity, he is supposed to marry and live an householder's life for roughly 25 years. Or, as they say, when the grandson is born, he should leave the house and go to forest. The wife is with him, but done enough with the worldly life. In the forest, they are mostly devoted to God and living in very small needs, obtained without much effort. That is vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means going or traveling in the forest. Now he has not gone to the forest, but his life has become like one who has gone to forest. So that is, the form of life has not changed from outside, but the inside, the mind has changed. After that, living sufficiently with the wife in the forest, the renunciation should come and the man and wife get separated and the man becomes a sannyasi, devoted entirely to God, and that is how the life was divided. The wife either goes back to the son or she also becomes sannyasini or a renunciate anchorite in her own right. So the reason why Sudhiram lived like a vanaprasthin at Kamarpukur, like it is difficult to imagine the thoughts that arose in the minds of Sudhiram and his wife the day they came to Kamarpukur with the 10-year-old Ramkumar and Katyayani, their daughter of 4, and settled in the cottage given to them. The world, filled with jealousy and hatred, must have seemed to them a hideous place of the dead, like Smashan. Shrouded in dismal darkness, thoughts of affection, love, kindness, and justice, no doubt, occasionally shed their dim light, raising in quivering hearts some hope of happiness. But it is blasted the next moment, picture of the world. leaving behind deep depression in the normal minds, but not in Sudhiram. It is natural that many such thoughts should have arisen in their minds when they compared their previous condition with the present one. I was doubting that word, so I went to Bengali and there is no mention of depression there. There is no mention of depression there. Huh? The world appeared like this. যে अंधकार সেই अंधकारे সেখানে বিরাজ করিতে থাকে. So the literal translation would be, it is blasted the next moment, leaving behind the same darkness as before. Leaving behind the same darkness as before, not depression. It is natural that many such thoughts should have arisen in their minds when they compared their previous condition with the present one. Only when misery and calamity come do men realize the transitoriness and worthlessness of this world. So this experience tells us the transitoriness and worthlessness of this world. It is therefore not at all surprising that Sudhiram now felt detached from the world, and that that does not happen to other people. They go on brooding and brooding and brooding. And that his profoundly religious mind was full of devotion to God and reliance on Him. So both sides, reliance on God increases. For he could not forget how unexpected and unasked for was the shelter given to them. Not that, oh, this is too small. No. Unexpectedly it has come. That it has come from God. Is it then strange that being indifferent to worldly prospects, he once more devoted his time to the service and worship of the Divine Lord? So that increased. And surrendered himself completely to Raghuveer. From now on, he was living no doubt in the world, but like the Vanaprasthins of ancient times, he was not of the world. So attachment to world is gone, so he is not of the world, he is living in the world like a Vanaprasthin. Sudhiram came upon the shaligram of Raghuveer in a strange way. So now experiences start coming. After this, much nishtha, testing, faith, and now experiences, spiritual, strange experiences start coming. God will come to their house as an image first, and then later on, God will come as their son. An incident which happened at this time still further intensified Sudhiram's faith in God. One day, he went to another village on business. On his way back, business means some work. Not that he was selling or purchasing something there. On his way back, he became tired and rested under a tree. The vast, lonely field and a soft, pure breeze brought repose to his troubled mind and tired body. He felt a strong desire to lie down, and no sooner had he done so then he was overcome with sleep. So mind was peaceful in a way. He then had a dream in which he saw standing before him. So when God is not able to come in the waking state because the mind is still in the world, but the mind has developed inside. So God comes in the dream and leaving some permanent mark. He then had a dream in which he saw standing before him his chosen ideal Bhagavan Sri Ramachandra in the guise of a divine boy. His body green like the tender blades of Durva grass. So Rama is Sham, greenish Sham. Pointing to a particular spot, the boy said, I have been staying here for a long time without food and without anyone to take care of me. Take me to your house. I have a very strong desire that you should serve me. So Rama has several forms. In one form, he is lying there without food. And he wants Sudhiram to take and serve him. Sudhiram was overcome with emotion and said, paying homage to the Lord again and again, O Lord, I am without devotion and I am very poor. That is how he feels. Very poor. Service befitting you is not possible in my heart. Without devotion means if he has sufficient devotion, he could overcome that. And if he has sufficient money, he could feed him well. But none of them are there. So, service befitting you, you are a king, is not possible in my heart, and I shall lose all grace should there be any flaw in it. So, Deva Parat, Seva Parat is dangerous. You may become disgraceful to me, and I shall lose all grace should there be any flaw in it. So, why do you make such a difficult request of me? At this, the boy Ramachandra comforted him and said graciously, do not be afraid. I will not take offense of any shortcoming. Take me with you. Unable to control his feelings at the Lord's unexpected grace, Sudhiram burst into tears. Just then his dream came to an end, because such happenings, tears and all that generally break the dream. When he awoke, Sudhiram wondered at the strangeness of his dream and thought, if only such good fortune would be mine. Then suddenly his eyes fell upon the paddy field close by, and at once he recognized it as the very place he had seen in the dream. So it is not imagination. The connection with the outside world is there. Out of curiosity, he approached the spot where he saw a beautiful salagrama stone. It's a black stone, and the signs tell the man of knowledge that it is fit to be worshipped as Raghuveer. Salagrama stone and a snake with expanded hood guarding it. So it is God. Nobody, ordinary people should touch it. So there is a snake over it. Eager to possess the stone because of the dream, he hastened towards it. On reaching it, he found that the snake had disappeared. So it is going in a proper place. And that the shaligram was lying at the entrance of its hole, the hole of the snake. Seeing that the dream had come true, his heart leaped in joy and he felt no fear of the snake. Convinced that he had received God's command, crying out, Glory to Raghuveer, Sudhiram took the stone in his hands. So in the dream he had said no, but when he had insisted, he was so joyful. He carefully examined the marks on it and with his knowledge of the Shastras, found it to be a Raghuveera Shila, shaligram with the mark of being fit for Raghuveer. Beside himself with joy and wonder, he returned home, performed the purificatory ceremony of the shaligram according to the Shastras, and installing it as the family deity, began to worship it daily. Even before he came upon the shaligram in this strange manner, Sudhiram had been worshipping Sri Ramachandra's chosen deity every day. He also worshipped daily the goddess Shitala, invoking her in a consecrated pot filled with water. So Shitala was not worshipped in his house in an image. That is another custom in India. Symbols of God are many and various, and a pot filled with water is enough to represent Shitala or many gods. So that he was already worshipping. Raghuveer was already worshipping, maybe in an image, but now he got that Shila to worship Raghuveer. Sudhiram's steadfastness and dependence on God. So this is increasing now. His difficulties continued, but Sudhiram cheerfully bore all kinds of misfortune, strictly observing as ever the religious injunctions. On some days when there was nothing in the house to eat, his devoted wife Chandra Devi is another way of telling about her. This will not be Chandra Devi, Chandra people call, so the author calls her Chandra Devi. His devoted wife Chandra Devi would grow anxious and tell him about it. But unperturbed, her authority is her husband, and husband's authority is God. But unperturbed, Sudhiram would comfort her and say, never mind, if Raghuveer chooses to fast, why shouldn't we? At this, the simple-hearted Chandra also, like her husband, would resign herself to Raghuveer and go on with her household duties. So immediately gets convinced, and somehow food sufficient for the day would come. So if he does not eat Raghuveer, we shall also not eat. But it would come. And that is how the God tastes and blesses, tastes and blesses. The paddy field at Lakshmi Jala. Now we are told the name of the place where that paddy field was there. It was not in Kamarpukur. But Sudhiram did not suffer long from this uncertainty about food. For the 1 bigha and 10 chataks of land at Lakshmi Jala, given to him by his friend Suklal Goswami, now by the grace of Raghuveer, began to produce so much paddy that there was not only enough for the little family's annual needs, but also something left over to feed guests and strangers. So in the poverty, they still want to feed guests and strangers. No, it is not sufficient for us, not that attitude, and it grew sufficient to give them. Sudhiram hired men to plough the field, and when the rice seedlings were ready, that is how paddy is grown. Rice paddy is put in soil, and then the seedlings are ready, they are spread and distributed after ploughing the land. He would transplant a few himself, taking the name of Raghuveer, and then let the men finish the work. That was the custom. Sudhiram's devotion increased, and he had spiritual visions. Neighbors revered him. So, visions getting 2 or 3 years went by in this manner. Sudhiram depended entirely on Raghuveer and what chance brought him, and he did not lack plain food and clothing. They did not hanker for something special. Therefore, the hard trials of these 2 or 3 years, instead of discouraging him, filled his heart with a sense of reliance on God and a continuous flow of peace and contentment, such as few experience. Because that is the trend. So if good things come, faith grows. Bad things come, she survives. Henceforth, it was natural for him to be always indrawn, and in consequence, he had from time to time various divine visions. Because if the mind is indrawn, then from the subtle level, the visions would arise. Every morning and evening during his prayers, he would repeat the meditation mantra describing the Gayatri with such deep devotion and concentration of mind that his chest became flushed and from his closed eyes flowed tears of love. So the Gayatri worship also is so much devotion. Gayatri worship is common. You worship any deity or anybody, but when you go for education, the Gayatri mantra is given to you. In Grahastha life, in Vanaprastha life, it continues. That is the Gayatri is the meter. It is worship of sun god or of Hiranya Garbha, the indwelling reality. Antaryami. Early in the morning, he would go, basket in hand, to pick flowers for the worship, and at such times, the goddess Shitala, who received his daily adoration, would appear before him as an 8-year-old girl, dressed in reds and wearing many ornaments. That is Shitala. She would come in form. She would accompany him smiling and help him pluck flowers by bending the branches in blossom. Those branches which have flowers are high, so Shitla would bend them for him. These visions filled his heart with joy. His staunch faith and deep devotion were reflected in his countenance and kept him always on a high spiritual plane. Seeing his calm and peaceful face, the villagers instinctively recognized his spirituality and began to venerate him with the love and devotion due to a rishi, because he is seeing now. Whenever they saw him coming, they stopped all idle talk, stood up and greeted him respectfully. They hesitated to enter the tank when they saw him bathing and waited in reverence till he had finished. So, just like a rishi, they are venerating him. With complete faith in him, they came for his blessings in weal and woe. So, like a rishi, they are honoring him and he is going steadfastly. How the members regarded Chandra Devi, that also have to see. She is also growing. Chandra Devi's loving and guileless nature captivated her neighbors and made them look upon her as their mother. All the neighbors. From no one else did they receive such heartfelt sympathy in their joys and sorrows. See, from poor people. Every step we have to consider ourselves. And where God came, that we have to think. God will come to our heart if we follow this couple. From no one else did they receive such heartfelt sympathy in their joys and sorrows. So sympathy at least. The poor knew that whenever they went to Chandra Devi, they would receive not only food, but also such a genuine welcome and affection as would fill their hearts with inexpressible joy. So how much content she had, how much faith in God she had, and it radiated from her to others. Wonderful. To holy men living on alms, so that is about the common poor people. And there are sadhus everywhere in India, and they live only on alms. Her door was always open. There was nothing that the second quality, poor people, sadhus, now there was nothing that the children could not coax out of Chandra Devi. Thus, everyone, young and old, was welcome at any time to Sudhiram's cottage, which, in spite of poverty and suffering, always radiated a wonderful peace and joy. And we are told that God is born in a poor family when such is the condition of the house. Sudhiram's sister Ramshila. Now other characters are entering their life. As already mentioned, Sudhiram had a sister named Ramshila and had two younger brothers, Nidhiram and Kanairam, the latter being also called Ramkanai. At the time he lost all his property on account of the dispute with the landlord of Derepur. His sister was 35 and his brothers 30 and 25 respectively. By then, all the three had married and set up their own homes. Ramshila was married to Bhagavat Bandhopadhyay, who lived at Shilimpur. That day I explained to you Chattopadhyay. Banda Ba is Bengali pronunciation. Vande Upadhyay, worshipful, reverential Brahmin. That becomes Banduje or Banerjee, who lived at Shilimpur, a village about 12 miles west of Kamarpukur. Miles. So, multiplied by 1.6, about 20 kilometers, 19 to 20 kilometers. She had a son, Ramchand, and a daughter, Hemangini. At the time of Sudhiram's misfortune, Hemangini was 16 and Ramchand, who had begun to practice as a mukta pleader, was about 21. So different types, advocate and all that. In villages, they are muktas. Born in the home of her maternal uncles at Derepur, Hemangini was a greater favorite with them than her brother. Sudhiram brought her up like his own daughter, and when she reached the proper age, he himself gave her away in marriage to Krishna Chandra Mukhopadhyay of Shiod, a village 5 miles northwest of Kamarpukur. They are all in the neighborhood, one can visit them these days. In course of time, she became the mother of 4 sons, Raghav, Ramratan, Hridayaram and Rajaram. This Hridayaram will later on come to Sir Thakur, and we have met him several times in the Sadat Bhav and Guru Bhav also. Sudhiram's 2 brothers. So, I have to complete the story. What happened to them? We could not find out whether Nidhiram had any children, but Kanairam had 2 sons, Ram Tarak, otherwise known as Haladhari, who came to Dakshineshwar later on, and Kalidas. Kanairam was of a devotional and contemplative nature. So, his younger brother also had a contemplative nature. That contemplative nature means bhavuk. Bhavuk in Bengali is translated as contemplative nature. One could feel God, that is called bhavuk. One had devotional feeling, is called bhavuk. In English, the translation is contemplative nature. What could you translate in English? A man of feelings. Devotional is given already. Devotional and contemplative. Devotional is bhakta and bhavuk bhakta. Feeling. Once, his example beautiful. Huh? Once he went to a drama yatra. I have told you, village dramas, religious dramas are performed on open stages, which portrayed the banishment of Sri Ramachandra to the forest. So this refers to Ramayana story, all Indians know it. If there are foreigners, Rama was the son of Dashratha. Dashratha had 3 main wives, Kausalya, Sumitra and Kaikeyi, and Rama was born to Kausalya, Bharat to Kaikeyi, Lakshman and Shatrughna to Sumitra. Now, Kaikeyi had a maid servant, Manthara, who came from her father's house along with her, and she was a peculiar lady, only attached to Kaikeyi and Bharata, and as if nobody existed. So when Rama decided to coronate, Dasharatha, the father, decided to coronate Rama as the prince, that means the next king. Manthara filled Kaikeyi's mind with jealousy that now Kausalya will become the mother queen and you will be left out. And slowly she poisoned her mind. And so when Dasharatha came to break the news to her, she became very angry and said, "You must promise me." And Dasharatha, in some old war, Kaikeyi had gone with him and saved his life. So Dasharatha promised her that I will give you two boons. And she had said, I will ask when the time comes. And that mantra reminded, and she asked, by one boon, I want Bharata to be installed as the future king, not Rama. And by second boon, I want Rama to be banished to forest for 14 years. And that is being enacted in the drama. The performance became so realistic to him because of Bhavukata that he took Kaikeyi's secret plotting and scheming to be real and was on the point of striking the actor who played the part, beating. On the point of, people said that, but that shows his Bhavukata, feeling. On the loss of the ancestral property, Nidhiram and Kanairam, it appears, settled in the village of their fathers-in-law. So their wives took care of them. They went to the fathers-in-law. So Sudhiram is now left with his own family. Sudhiram's nephew Ramchan. We already said that Ramchandra Bandyopadhyay, Ramshila's son, was a pleader. His practice in the town of Medinipur. So these pleaders will not get anything in the village. In the town of Medinipur. District town, brought him a good income. Considering the straitened circumstances of his maternal uncles, he now sent 15 rupees a month in those days to help Sudhiram and 10 rupees each to Nidhiram and Kanairam. If Sudhiram did not hear from his nephew for some time, he would become anxious and hasten to Medinipur to see him. So that is not depending on the money, but on his affection to Ramchan. We were told of a strange incident which occurred when Sudhiram was going to Medinipur, and we relate it here as an example of his deep devotion to God. That we shall take up tomorrow. Sudhiram's how devotion will play in his life. It's a wonderful incident, and we shall read it tomorrow. Om Sarvadharma Sthapakasvam Sarvadharma Swarupakah Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishna Te Namaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.